Instead of sort of walking through life, I often say that I walked through life from the outside in. I was just looking at the outside to see how everything felt in accordance with me. And now I'm living from the inside out to see how I feel in accordance with everything.
This is By Joyan Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Joining us today is a CEO, thought leader, inspirational speaker, and a published poet. In addition to oversight of a family's business, Leonardo's Pizza, she has chaired multiple corporate and non-profit boards. She is also a channeled writer who has published two poetry collections, Heart and Moon and White Stars. She is also the co-host of the Collecting Insight podcast, which explores the joy and complexities of the human experience. So she's here today to empower you to rise, to unlock what may be lying in wait, sparkling the gifts that will not only change your life, but can change the world. So guys, help me in welcoming the CEO turned soul explorer, Sara Byers. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be connected with you as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to learn how did everything change for you. You were a successful CEO for almost 2 decades, running your family business, I believe, and then everything changed. So you call yourself the CEO turned soul explorer. How did it happen?
Oh, thank you for asking. I know it's such an interesting path that I never ever expected. And I will say, actually, my path to CEO was somewhat wrought because I had pretty crippling anxiety when I was younger through my 20s, but I kind of just kept pushing through, believing in something that was bigger than myself. Um, but it was interesting. I, like so many of us, I think we kind of race through life. You know, I was racing through life. I was an incredibly busy business person. I was a mom. At the time was on 7 or 8 boards, chairing a few of them each time, going to community events, and really didn't have any time and missed all of the signs. I think that oftentimes we people are telling us things, we're hearing things. I would hear all the time, I have no idea how you do everything you do. And I would take it as sort of like this kind of badge of honor. I'm like, oh, I just do. And I really felt that way because it was just fluid. It was just my life. And I actually, in December of 2019, a sister of mercy, a nun in a church who I didn't know terribly well, but she was someone who was a leader in our community, a college president, and she was the commissioner of corrections for our state. And she called me, even though we'd maybe only talked twice for 5 minutes each time, and said, I need to talk to you. You are coming up in my prayers, and you have been for a couple of months. And I thought you just needed some additional blessing, which I've been doing. But lately, you've been coming up morning, noon, and night. And I feel the need to ask you, is there something you're not paying attention to? And I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like dying. There's something going on inside me. I went to the doctor with this, and I have a lovely doctor who was like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I just brushed it aside. I even brushed that aside because I had no idea what she was talking about. And I said, I'm busy, but I'm great, because I felt that way. And then in March of 2020, so 4 months later, my stepfather had had Alzheimer's for 11 years. And our relationship was fine, but somewhat wrought because he was a really strong opinionated lawyer. And I was a want to be lawyer when I was younger, somewhat argumentative, I guess. We were both really passionate, so we would sometimes just butt heads. But when he developed Alzheimer's, it's like all of that part of him faded away and he and I connected in spirit. Now I know that. I couldn't understand it at the time. I would feel magnetized to go be in his presence. I just felt something that's giving me goosebumps right now that I didn't understand. And he was moved to hospice care. And my mother and I were driving back and forth to hospice every day. And when I would drive back and forth, I would listen to this music, the instrumental from the movie The Titanic, which sounds really ominous, but because I wanted to feel it all, because I knew he was about to finish his time on this earth. And so the day he passed, I drove home listening to that same music. And I got to my driveway and I said, okay, it's time for this to end. So I turned the channel to the Lumineers and they were playing the song Ophelia. And that's the song that came up on my car screen. But that was not the song that started playing on my radio. It was Frank Sinatra's My Way. And it started out, and now the end is near, and I face the final curtain. And I just sat there in the driveway, knowing that this was my stepfather communicating with me. I have never felt that in my life. And I still wasn't certain, I'm a business person. I'm very sort of numbers driven, data driven. This doesn't make sense. And my mom, who is a scientist, was reading a ton of books through her grieving process and connected with this person, a medium. And I got her a session with the medium. It was 8 months later. And this medium is completely across the country. And she got on the phone with my mom. And the first thing she said is, there's a gentleman here and he is singing. Does Frank Sinatra's My Way mean anything to you? And that blew the cover off of everything that I thought was true about the world. And not that I have any idea what's happening, but it just opened me up to the things that we don't see and the things that we may not understand. And from there, I was flooded with words in the middle of the night, poetry, just became more and more open to ideas and thoughts and ultimately my own self.
Right. It was fascinating. And of course, I get goosebumps as well, especially when you had a session with the medium. And, you know, so, so before that, before the passing of the stepfather, did you not believe in any spiritual stuff, soul, or whatsoever?
Such a good question. Looking back, I always was driven. So I would take leaps that made absolutely no sense. I remember I live in Vermont in the US now. I lived down south in North Carolina. And I just all of a sudden felt like I wanted to move back to Vermont. And I had a pretty significant career. This was before my family's business, where I was hugely successful, about to move to Houston, Texas with a promotion. And I wanted to move home to Vermont, which meant I would give up everything I'd built, essentially, that I would take a 70% pay cut to do it. But I just felt it and I jumped. So I always believed in something bigger than myself, and I always trusted. I didn't really ever tap into that. I didn't try to explain it. I didn't feel it as clearly as I feel it now, but I think it was always with me. And I think one of the most tangible examples is I used to give quite a few speeches. And when I would write a speech, even back then, even in 2015, I wrote a commencement speech and I'd write it in about 10 minutes because it would just flow through me. And I always said, like, the words are mine, it's my story, but it just came to me. So there were pieces of it always, but I hadn't really tied them together. And I wonder if that's probably true for many of us. We maybe see signs or we experience that just greater feeling, but we just accept it and discard it. We don't really take it further.
But how do we know that that is a sign for us? Like, because we are seeing so many things every day, right? How do we know that's the sign?
Totally. Oh my gosh, I know. You know, what I've come to believe is that it is through trust. And that's because the validation that we seek, I'm not certain why I always sought that. You know, and yes, it was helpful. That medium was helpful for validation, but now I just trust that what I'm seeing is what I believe it is. I trust myself. I trust my own feeling. The fact that I'm noticing it, the fact that I'm recognizing it is all I need. So I'm not looking for something any longer outside of myself to validate my own experience. And I see things all the time. And through that trust, all of these signs just seem to amplify. It's sort of like, you know, when you're thinking about someone and then they text you, or you hear a song and then you hear it somewhere else. Like, I now believe and trust that all of those things are trying to get my attention. So they're special and they're unique, and it's something that I need to look at even more.
So since you are now a channeled writer, so you receive messages, right? And when that happened, when it first happened, how what was your response? I mean, were you like, oh my God, what is happening? What is this? Where does it come from? Like talk to me about that.
Oh my gosh, I know. Am I starting to lose my mind?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I think in the beginning, what would happen is that I would be like sleeping, like half sleeping, half awake. And I would just have like these words running through my head. And I think that maybe happens to some of us on occasion. And they would just keep repeating, and I could not go back to sleep. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I want to go back to bed. And finally, after multiple nights of that, I just put a notebook by the side of my bed. I'm like, maybe if I write it down, it will stop. So I got up, wrote it down, and then came the next set of words. Like, I would literally keep putting my head back on the pillow, getting up, writing 5 words, putting my head down, getting back up. And what was probably most, not disconcerting, but a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning is that the voice didn't exactly sound like me. Like, it would use there would be words that would come through that were like hearken, like old kind of antiquated words. They've shifted through the years, because I've now written over 3,000 poems that have guided my life. I mean, I'm up sometimes for hours at night. But I just, again, it was one of those leaps for me. It was sort of like, I just know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I have no idea where it's going to take me, but I just know I'm supposed to be writing these down. And what ended up happening is they truly started to guide my life. They were the sort of the catalyst of opening me up and introducing me to a world beyond that which I knew, to the way that we're all connected, to love, to joy. But I kept that hidden for quite a long time. You know, how does this part mesh with the CEO and board leader and community leader part? So I hid that for a long time. And then finally I was like, I'd written so many. I'm like, these can't just be for me. Like, I'm holding them and I don't know what to do with them. And so I created an Instagram page, Dear Joy Love, where I was like, I'll just pick one and post one daily. But I also did not tell anyone in my community at that time that I was doing that. I was like hidden under the Dear Joy Love Instagram page because it was uncomfortable. It was still uncomfortable. I didn't know how to mesh it with my outer world.
So right now, everyone knows that this is you, right? Doing both the CEO and as well as the.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get that. Many leaders, not just you, many CEOs, they are so afraid to be seen vulnerable, or to be seen the softer side of themselves.
Yeah.
So why do you believe that today, of course, I can ask you this question, why do you believe that being vulnerable, showing your intuitive side is such a powerful strength as a leader?
Oh my gosh. That just gave me goosebumps again. You know, because being a leader, to me, being a leader now is, whereas before maybe I could never have imagined that I would be in the positions that I have been in. And I really did believe when I sort of talked about my anxiety that I dealt with a lot of my life, I really didn't feel like I should be there. Like I really didn't feel worthy. I felt like I had to conform and be a certain thing to first be allowed at the table and then secondly to be able to stay there. I think that a lot of people feel that way. I remember a couple of years ago, I was talking with a colleague, a CEO colleague, about imposter syndrome. And that's something that, I have been rife with through my life, feeling like, okay, I'm going to pretend to be a leader and I'm going to pretend to be capable. And he said to me, like, so what you're saying, if you don't believe that you belong here, you're saying that we all are idiots. And I was like, no, I'm saying that I'm not smart enough to be here and to be leading this organization. And he goes, no, you're saying that we're not smart enough to see who you really are. He's like, we can see you. We've chosen you and we can see you. And that was really that it sort of turned my imposter syndrome on its head, because we're so used to conforming to this idea of what leadership is. But really, to me, leadership is, of course, all of the things that you're responsible for within your company or organization. But even bigger than that, it's just being human. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a group of humans who are doing this work, who are creating this product, or who are serving our community in this way. We're a collection of humans working together. And if we can't be human, if we can't be the truth of who we are, then I actually don't think we're achieving the heights that we really could. And so for me, even before this sort of channeled writing and all of that, within speeches, etc., I would always try to bring the heart of who I was, because I knew instinctively that that was what I was doing at the table. I'm not the smartest person. I'm not the most financially savvy. I don't have the most, significant leadership and business acumen of anyone out there. But what I knew I could bring was communicating a slightly different part of what leadership can be. And I always did that. So I remember I joined a board and I was the only female. And so I joined the board and, I walk in and it's a bunch of black and navy suits. And, the way that I always kind of, I'm not intentionally pushing, but I just want to be me. I could have made the choice to wear, you know, a black shift dress or a black suit myself. And instead, I'm going in with a gray dress with a bright pink flower on the front. Those are the things that I just want to, in my way, just continue to slightly change the story. And I I was the chair of the board of the Vermont Business Roundtable, which is a group of 100 CEOs. And one morning I was like, I'm the third female chair in the organization's history, but I wanted to start the meeting with a poem that I wrote. And no, and people didn't know this at that time. And I did because I just felt it that morning. And what surprised me so much was the number of people who came up to me after. I had people who were remarking on my courage, I heard people they were writers themselves, people sharing themselves with me like they never had. And it showed me that when we are able to show up, when we are able to lead as our true selves, we really do give other people license to do the same. And I don't know that there's anything more important in this world or at this juncture than being our whole selves so that we can have a whole world. Because the more fragmented and the more fractured we are, I think the more fragmented and fractured everything is because it kind of starts with us. So I'm hopeful that all of us, especially those of us in positions of leadership, because that's, now I feel like I have this responsibility to ensure that the next person can be themselves.
I guess that ties beautifully to one of your sayings, which is if we want a world that is whole, we must first find the courage to behold ourselves. So yeah, actually I wanted to ask this question, like what does that mean and look like to behold
Mm.
ourselves? Does it mean that we just have to walk into any rooms, show up as who we truly are, being imperfect, messy, and without any filter? That is what I'm saying.
No, totally. It's such a good question. I I never realized, I think to other people, like I said, I think other people saw me more than I thought they did. In the early stages of my leadership, I thought that I was, I thought I was holding some parts back, and I was to a certain extent because I wasn't vocalizing them. But I think we all feel each other in ways beyond communication. So it's sort of energy. But for me, that wholeness was I would be a bunch of pieces. Like I wouldn't carry all of the pieces with me everywhere. In my own heart. So when I was sitting at even leading our own business, when I was sitting at a management team meeting, I wasn't necessarily in my heart holding what I had cried about 2 days ago, or I wasn't holding space for all of it. And the difference now is that I get to the table as all of it, as the messy, as you put it, as the hard, being and sharing with people, with the team, with the group, the truth of where I am, not having to have it all together all the time. Because the more truthful I am with myself and the more truthful I am with the organization, the stronger we all are. So that can be a risk. I often ask myself, because I want to be honest with myself, am I able to do this now because I've gotten to a certain level where I can? And if I had started out this way, would I have become as successful as I am? And I honestly don't know the answer to that. And so I call that out because it's something I think about. But I hope that the next person does have the license to do it because of the path that I forged in some way. I remember I was chair of another business organization in 2015 or 2016, and I had to give the chair of the board speech to a group of, I don't know, 1,000 people maybe. I got up there, and every prior speech had been about business and tax policy and economic development and workforce development. And I got up there and said that I was more than just business, and I shared other parts of myself. I shared, the way that I grew up, my parents. I shared the things that I worry about. I shared conversations that I've had with my daughter. I then shared that my sister had suffered with opiate addiction for 20 years. I shared all of those parts of myself and communicated that we are all more than just this one thing, than just this business organization that we're a part of and the business that we represent, and that we all care about where we are, even though we all might look different, might have different opinions, might we all care, we're all doing the same thing. And I remember at the time that was a really big statement, a really big move that this business organization had never heard. But I knew that it was right. And I heard that it was the only standing ovation that they'd ever seen. Because I think people yearn for the messy. I think people yearn for the real. I think we're all yearning from that. We're yearning for connection with each other. But these systems and structures that we've put in place almost make us believe that's not what we want, make us sort of shy away from it. But really, it's connection.
I mean, even in corporate, even in big organizations, wow, because I do believe that there's a place for that, right? Maybe not in corporate. I mean, that's my belief, of course, that's what most people would think, right?
Yes. I think I think it's shifting. And I don't know what that shift is attributed to. I think we've sort of evolved in a variety of ways for a variety of reasons, societal pressure, societal difference. And I think that the next generation of leaders is requiring this. I see my daughter's generation, my daughter is 20, but I see this desire to not just go, 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 push, 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 productivity, productivity, but this true balance between sort of joy and living, and that sort of business and productivity lens. So I think that corporations are going to have to adapt and are going to have to recognize the importance of sort of multiple bottom lines of yes, profit, and yes, fulfilling mission, but doing so in a way that respects and honors the human condition and each individual as they are. I think that the most successful companies of the future are going to be that, because I think the next generation is going to require it.
Yeah, you're so right,
Yeah.
because a new generation is coming, and it starts at the top, right? Like people like you giving a speech on your life's challenges, your life story. I mean, it starts at the top, so people at the bottom will be like, wow, she's doing that. It means that we are able to follow and do the same. It's about giving others the permission, right?
Yeah.
To be
Yes.
vulnerable.
And I think to do that, I was just thinking, who gave me permission? And I think there were definitely people along the way. But I also think I had to give myself permission. Like I had to sit and listen to myself. I had to trust myself. I had to trust myself and that sort of inner guidance more than anything else. And that's only gotten stronger, where it's just, as I've sort of integrated the sort of soul explorer and the CEO, the soul explorer has become so strong. The soulfulness, the truth of myself, the connection to something greater has become so strong that there's nothing else that I'm not going to sacrifice it for anything. And so I think, the more we can get into a space where we truly can hear ourselves and what we want to express, the better we're going to be in those leadership positions. Yeah.
And what exactly do you do to connect with yourself, your true self? Do you meditate or journaling
Mm,
or
yeah.
writing?
There are so many ways now. I would say that the writing definitely helps now, but I also, I started meditating. So I started sort of this official meditation. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to do this in the morning. I'm going to do it in the afternoon. It was very regimented. And I've learned that for me, regimented, it's a good starting point, but I can get very I am a CEO, so I can get like check, check, like do it, like it becomes a productivity thing and a to-do list rather than actual connection to self. So I had someone say something to me. She said to me, "Where is your solitude?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm meditating." She's like, "It doesn't sound, where are you just yourself?" And so now I take 5 minutes when I wake up and just sit. I will finish a meeting or finish a Zoom and just sit for 5 minutes with myself. And I think that what that looks like is, at first you just notice like your body, you notice how your body responds to things. You start, paying attention to the sensations that you have, goosebumps. You can almost feel what the energy feels like outside of you. The more time you spend in that space of solitude, the more you start to get to know yourself on a deeper level. And that just continues to open up different venues. I'm sure all of us have people, will then come across people in our lives. And I have this recent obsession with John Batiste, who is a musician out of the US who I love. I saw him, I just felt it. You sort of, once you pay attention to your body, you're almost a sensor walking through life. You're like seeing where you like beep 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 beep, see where things light you up. So I just continue to take in life in that way, to see where, a beautiful flower lights me up, or a piece of music lights me up. Or so now I'm just constantly looking within to learn more about myself and to continue to expand myself. But it takes introspection and an awareness, I think. Instead of sort of walking through life, I often say that I walked through life from the outside in. I was just looking at the outside to see how everything felt in accordance with me. And now I'm living from the inside out to see how I feel in accordance with everything.
I must say it's such a relief to hear from a CEO that meditation is not a must. Because sometimes I skip my meditation and I feel guilty about that, because it has become a to-do list, like you said, right? Checklist, like things you have to do when you wake up in the morning, so yeah, I love that. I love how you put it, where is your solitude, just be with yourself, what lights you up, and that is so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Now if you could go back to your, I don't know how old are you today, but if you could go back to your 30-year self when you were still, the successful CEO, running
Yeah.
things, and being anxious, right? If you could tell her anything, what would you say to her?
You are. I think I would say, and I would say this to every single person on this planet: you are bigger, stronger, more capable than you'll ever be able to imagine. That you don't really understand yourself. Because that anxious self couldn't, was pushing through life, but couldn't really imagine any of the things that have happened. So I would want her to just believe, to believe in whatever dreams she carried, to believe in her own right to be in every situation she found herself in, and to believe in her own voice and her own capability. Because it took me a long time to believe in myself. Yeah, so that's what I would tell her.
Beautiful. How about for people who find it challenging to trust the unseen, or what couldn't be measured or couldn't be explained? Like they still couldn't trust, they only trust the data, what they can see in front of them. So how would you help them or encourage them to trust what couldn't be explained or seen?
To me, we have this one life, this one life, at least in this body, in this form. And so to me, if your life, if your experience, if your being would feel better, would feel more loving, would feel more joyful through trusting even something without evidence, why wouldn't we want it? So to me, We can stay regimented in all of the things that are evidence based. But if that's keeping us stuck, if that's keeping us unhappy, if that's keeping us mired in sadness or stress and disconnection, why would we not want to just give up trust? We're not giving up anything really. We're only embracing what could be possible. So to me, it's really looking at why we need the proof of things. There's so much that's not proven. To think that we are the only things, only sentient beings, that we're the only things that are here, that we see everything. I mean, I'm always struck by the fact that we look at the world through the senses that we have, and then think it's amazing when we see an animal that has a different sense, or that there's connection between things that we can never even imagine because we look through our own view. But the truth is that there are what we would call miracles absolutely everywhere in every moment. And the more we allow them, the more we trust them, the more we believe in them, the more we're able to harness the miracles that are available for us. And to me, there's nothing stronger than that. So I love that question, because I think that held me back for a long time, was just the need for proof. Um, but I realize my life is so much happier just believing that there's something bigger than me.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about is you also said that it's not about what you have built, but who you have become. And I really love that because it's one of my favorite quotes as well. Like, success is not my version is success is not what you get at the end of the day, but the person you become when you get there. So I think it's kind of aligned with what you're saying, but help me and my listeners understand better, the deeper meaning behind that statement, your statement, and what we need to work on within ourselves.
We always hear from people who are sort of approaching their death. We hear about what they feel in those moments, and that they're not looking back and saying, thank goodness I got that house, and thank goodness I built that business, and thank goodness that I, was able to achieve that award that I never dreamed of. They are sitting in that moment thinking, thank goodness I had all of this joy. Thank goodness I had all of this love. They're in a space of truly looking within at the things that mattered most. And so to me, the things that we build are an outpicturing of the things that we are. But ultimately, it's really who we are that's creating all of it. So there's nothing more important than who we are. And in sort of, because I think the greater person that we are, the more we're able to connect with ourselves, the greater our gifts to the world ultimately. So it's not, my greatest gift to the world might be talking with you right now. And it's not necessarily something that I've built. It's just the sharing and the collision that happens because of it. So, as we're striving, I think we're taught to strive to just build and build and build. I was chasing achievement after achievement. And what was surprising me was I would keep racking them up. I mean, I was just like, I would be doing things that I never imagined in my life. And yet it just, it kept going. It was sort of insatiable. None of it, there's not an end to what you build. There's always something to build that's better and bigger. But becoming is a whole different, it is gratifying in a different way, because you often hear about people who've accumulated a lot of wealth that, my amount of wealth might be just something that's amazing to someone who has less. And someone who makes 1,000 times more than me might think that they need more. Everyone's thinking that they need more when you're talking about building. But when you're talking about becoming, there's no real more. It just is. So to me, that is the space that we all should be yearning for. It is who we are, who we are becoming, how we connect with each other, because that's the true gratification. But I don't think you realize that until you start to live in that space.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Of course, it's also about becoming bigger of who you are, right? I think that if that makes sense, instead of
Yes.
bigger things, chasing bigger things, becoming more of who you are, a bigger version of yourself.
Totally. And the bigger you become, so the bigger you become in yourself, the more you take new risks, actually. The more you feel, because you feel so grounded in yourself that you do things that you might not otherwise do that take you to heights that you actually never imagined.
Right. Yeah. I think it's the other way around. It's not about what you achieve in the external world in order to feel secure, confident, but it's you have to feel confident and secure first. Then you go and do something bigger in the world, right?
So,
Yeah.
so true. I know. It's sort of, I often think about it as like, I think of life as this circle. Like, I think that you start out life, completely unencumbered. You have no layers. You're just like purely you. And then you are sort of seeking achievement and you're learning the outside world and you're like layering yourself with almost heaviness because that's how you're trying to achieve confidence is through the outer world.
Yeah.
And then you get to this point, to me, it's sort of like midlife where I am. And then you start to move the other direction and you're like, oh, wait. And you start to remove all the layers, remove the layers, remove them to become at the end of your life that same sort of pure whole self. It's sort of like the cycle of life, I think.
Yeah. I think so. Because you are not the first one that I interview on the podcast or I talk to. Always started out with being high achiever, successful, build businesses, only to find themselves anxious and lost and start all over again and on the spiritual path towards inner development. So I start to believe that this is the human cycle and we have to go through.
Totally. I know. And we
Yeah,
don't realize it. And maybe it is just the cycle that we have to go through. But if we could go through it maybe in a more conscious way, it would give us a bit more peace along the way, you know? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, is there anything that you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you, I didn't let you.
Not that I can think of. I would say just one thing popped up in my head a couple of questions back that I think is really important. And it was you were talking about sort of meditation and the to do list. And I want to share that, you know, the way that you sort of expand yourself, I think, is by following the breadcrumbs of what feels right to you, not following is what you're told is the right thing to do. Because what may work for you a year ago and have felt really good, if it doesn't feel good anymore, stop doing it. And I think that many of us just think that we're supposed to meditate, we're supposed to work out, we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to do that, and that's going to bring us to this place of being whole, when in actuality what brings us whole is actually listening to what we need in any given moment and heeding that and acting on it. It is listening to yourself and acting, because energy itself can get stagnant. Even if you're meditating every day for 20 years, if it doesn't feel right anymore, let it go. Because there's something new that's waiting for you that's being called to expand you. So I just wanted to say that piece because I think oftentimes we hear about what's good for us and hear about, but really we know, and so that's kind of where that trust comes in. So if you're looking to expand parts of yourself, know that nothing's constant, everything's impermanent, and you can change from day to day.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. Yep. And I'm gonna stop meditating today, starting from
I
tomorrow.
love
Yeah.
that.
Because I feel like that is the thing, right? The goal, or I would say the outcome of what we are trying to achieve, with meditation is to feel peace. But if I feel stressed that I'm not meditating today, that defeats the purpose, right?
I know, but we all do it. I mean, we all do. It's so true. Like we do. We feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel stress that we haven't done something that we haven't achieved. It's achievement at the end of the we've made it achievement. I'm so glad you shared that because a lot of us feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not just
Yeah.
you and me. It's a lot of
Mhm.
people who are listening to this as well. So thank you so much again for your time and sharing so lovingly and generously with me and my listeners. Now tell my people where they can find you. Do you work? Do you do any like coaching work by any chance? Like if they want to connect with you or learn more about your work, where should I send them?
Yes. So I have in the past, and I'm totally open to that, although it's not formalized, but my website is sarasbyers.com. And then my Instagram, where I post the poems, is Dear Joy Love on Instagram. So those are probably the best places. But you know, just like with all of us, I'm just open to connection. I believe that all of us have things to learn from each other. And I'm so grateful to you for this opportunity and for having the chance to connect with you. And I'm grateful to you for all of the ways that you are serving the world through this show. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Dear Joy Love, I really love that. Why your podcast is not called Dear Joy Love? That would be a hit.
Well, my podcast, I have a co-host. Our podcast, which has been really fun, is collecting insight because it actually started with a friend of mine. We would have these coffee conversations and we both view the world so differently. But ultimately, we shared a very similar heart space, but the way that we got there was so different that we thought it would be kind of cool to start a podcast where we, talk about a topic from these two totally different spaces. So for us, collecting insight felt right because that's what we're doing with each other. Because while she totally connects with joy and love, she comes from a very different space, probably a bit more grounded space than I do. So it's been awesome to see. So, but good question. I love it because I do. Dear Joy Love is close to my heart. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell. She's open enough to have a conversation, having a complete opposite opinions. I mean, that's courage.
Yes.
I want to listen to the podcast now. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Guys, go follow Sarah on her Instagram. It's called Dear Joy Love, and visit her website. Listen to her podcast. It's called Collecting Insight. And thank her for coming to our show today. If you feel inspired after listening today, share this with a friend or a family member because we are all in this together and collectively we can change the world. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joanne podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take Find Joy Joanne _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.